Hi, I'm Sam Hamm. I'm the screenwriter for Batman, the 1989 version with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. I worked also on Batman Returns. I am not the one who had the Joker kill Batman's parents, nor did I have Alfred let Vicky into the Batcave. Two of the questions that I get asked most often, which you would already know the answers to if you watch superhero stuff you should know. But I did write the Batman '89 comic series, which has just been released in hardcover with incredible art by Joe Quinones and Leonardo Ito. And if you want to see the adventures of the Michael Keaton Batman uh, following on Batman '89 and Batman Returns, this is basically a comic book adaptation of a movie that was never made. Uh, can't beat that with a baseball bat.
Welcome once again to Superhero Stuff You Should Know. I am, again, Ben Wan, the man who knows too much about Batman '89 today, though not as much maybe as the person next to me. And as usual, is my co host.
It's Andrew, everybody, and thank you for coming on. I guess you did the introduction, huh? Ben, I was about to do it. I was about to jump the gun. You do it.
Well,
Why not? Go for it.
let's go for it. But for those who didn't see the very beginning of this, one of our former guests, Michael Uslan, famously spent years trying to find the right script to take Batman seriously and get it off the ground. And we went over the many iterations of scripts and treatments done by different writers. But it was one man who had pitched himself around Warner Brothers who ended up cracking the code that James Bond screenwriters and comic book writers could not crack, which is writing the script for what would become the Batman '89 film. He's the reason why many of us became Batman fans and the reason why we have this podcast. I feel like this episode has been many years in the making. We are finally here. Welcome to the show, Sam Hamm.
Boy, now I feel like I owe a lot of apologies to a lot of people. Wow.
No, no.
They're all watching now. So no pressure. But thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you. This
thank
is
you so much
awesome.
for having me. I've been an avid follower of your podcast as the comics were coming out because you guys are catching all this stuff that I would never have noticed without your scholarship. So
Oh,
hats off to you.
even the stuff you were doing.
Especially the stuff I was doing.
Okay. Good to know. So we do like to sort of jump off of previous interviews and stuff because we have a limited time to talk to our guests here, so we want to kind of jump into stuff that we know you might not have been asked or rarely get asked, or stuff that we just really wanted to know. So let's jump into for Batman '89. We've covered that there were a lot of different comic book influences for this script. Some of the past ones you've cited have been the 1950s origin for the Joker with the man behind the red hood, the Joker's five-way revenge, Dark Knight Returns, the Killing Joke. You've even cited that there was some influence of Two-Face on your Joker. I guess I can see how Jack Napier's vanity is similar to Harvey Kent's at the time in
Yeah,
that comic.
exactly right. I mean, that was the idea that since we were taking a character who was going to be disfigured, and his gimmick was going to be essentially that he's disfiguring everybody around him, that the way to
Mhm,
play it would be to make him very sort of arrogant and vain.
mhm.
In the way that I think in the early versions, the early iterations of Two Face, he was actually called like Harvey Apollo
Yeah.
did
Mhm.
because he was such a he was such a matinee idol.
Yeah.
Um,
And that
but yeah,
definitely carries through.
I did try to incorporate some of that Two Face persona into our version of the Joker.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that, especially when you cited that. And then the other thing that we found is that interviews you cited that if there's any influence from the sort of Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers run, it would be sort of the mob, the mobsters in terms of the Grissom stuff. And
Mhm.
so that does lead into our question because we have covered here how this comic writer Steve Englehart has claimed that boss Carl Grissom is based off of Rupert Thorne. However, since you created Carl Grissom, I think you can have a better claim on whether or not that's true than he does. So Grissom is described as having quote impressive girth around the waist. Everybody. In the draft that you wrote in '86, which is similar to Rupert Thorne, closer to that than to Jack Palance. can you confirm or deny, was this ever a Rupert Thorne influence, or were you just coming up with an original mobster character?
Truthfully, I had not read the Englehart Rogers run until DC sent it to me. Tim and I were already sort of cooking up the story, and where it would go. We wanted to set it in a realistic, not a realistic, but we wanted to sort of create the world that would produce a Batman. Because there are no costume superheroes in our world, and so part of what we had to do going in is figure out what sort of environment we would build that would support a character like this. And a lot of it was based on the look. A lot of it was based on sort of familiar tropes from movies that we liked. I mean, there's we pulled a lot from a Dark Passage. I mean, the Joker's visit to the underworld doctor and so forth and so on. But
Oh, I got the image for that.
the Englehart, the Englehart Rogers series was great, but I can't say it was a heavy influence on the movie because I didn't read it until we were already underway. So.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've also gotten that vibe too because of the fact that a lot of the things that Englehart has claimed that a lot of the movies take from his stuff, and it's usually like it's been looser stuff where he feels like the Vicky Vale romance was close to his Silver St. Cloud thing. But I'm also like, well, if you're going to be the female lead of a Batman movie, you're gonna find out that Bruce Wayne is Batman in the movie. That's just kind of what's going to happen. So, like, I don't think that was taken from Silver St. Cloud at all. Even though I know she was in previous drafts from the other writers before you on this one. So, over to Andrew.
Okay, so was there also any influence of the early Joker stories? The Joker using flesh tone makeup seems to be right out of his first appearance.
In answer to, I can give you a very short answer to that question. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, moving on. Thank you. That's great.
We were,
we were going to run out of time. Okay.
We'll
kind
fill
of
it up.
working backward from. I had the big anthology with the great Kyle Baker cover, the greatest Joker stories ever told.
Oh,
And
I have
so
that one, I think.
had used that as a sort of a one-stop Joker reference. But I had read a bunch of the Joker stories when I was a kid, not necessarily in their original appearances, but they would pop up in the 80-page Giants, which were my most prized possessions when I was a kid. You have a 25-cent comic instead of a 10-cent comic.
Yeah.
And it would be 80 pages, and they would reprint a bunch of stories from the past with legendary Batman villains, and that's where I was introduced to Two-Face and to the early Joker stories, and to I'm still waiting for somebody to do a Batman movie with Gorilla Boss, who I think is the great. He's the obvious villain that they haven't gotten around to yet.
Matt Reeves, come on, give this to us for the Batman too.
An ape with a human brain. I mean, how can you go wrong with that?
I really want a curveball for the next one.
Yeah.
I think that'd be so cool.
Gorilla Boss for Batman 2. Make it happen, Matt Reeves. So
isn't this a Flash villain?
The whole deal with the Joker is, as we're saying, he was vain. And so the question becomes, if you have a guy who's vain and he's disfigured, how does he try to pass for normal? How does he try to sort of like put himself out there? And we wanted to take him through this phase, basically, where he's trying to fake it, where he's trying to be sort of his old handsome self, until it becomes quite apparent that he can't get away with it anymore. And that's when his whole aesthetic shifts. That's when he decides that if I can't put on slippers, I'm going to carpet the world.
Oh.
And so okay, now this is what I look like. This is what everybody's gonna look like.
Fair. Like I always
That's
love
awesome.
the image where he's wiping off the makeup to reveal the white rather than the reversal. So it's great. I have kind of this is sort of a chicken and the egg question, where I know that you had access to the Killing Joke script before the comic was out, because the comic was out like pretty much like the year right before the movie. But I know Alan Moore had it like written out way before that and stuff. And it's interesting because a lot of fans know that Joker is created at the chemical factory at Ace Chemicals. However, the specific name of Ace Chemicals is not in that 1950s story. Chronologically, it actually kind of just first shows up in your draft in 86. Is that from Alan Moore's script, or is this sort of a dictation from DC that, okay, now it's at Ace Chemicals, or are you actually the creator of Ace Chemicals?
Boy, that's a tricky question because I remember it as being Ace Chemicals, but it's possible that comes from the Alan Moore story. I mean,
Yeah,
if you would ask me, I would have thought that I knew from Boyhood
it's
uh,
a
that
weird
it was Ace
Mandela effect type
Chemicals,
of
but
thing.
we
Yeah.
we couldn't use Ace Chemicals
Ah,
in the movie because they found that there was some kind of there was a rights issue where there was already an Ace Chemicals somewhere that they were afraid of a lawsuit from, and so it became what is it, Apex Chemicals?
I think at one point it was Apex Chemicals in the concept art that we saw, but now it's Access
Or was it Acme
Chemicals in
Chemicals?
the
Oh,
it's Access as in the Access powers.
Axis
Uh,
Chemicals. That's
yeah,
it.
in the
That's it.
movie.
Right. Yeah.
But they might have been playing with Apex just because Apex Chemical was like the name of the chemical factory in the first Batman story in
Yeah.
Detective Comics 27. So like that's a possibility, but I've only seen the evidence of that in the concept art. I've never
Yeah.
seen I don't think they got to the phase of making anything for that.
Yeah, we bounced around among a number. We tried a number of different names starting with A, and I guess it turned out that this was a chemical company that was basically operated by ex-Nazis who had come back from Argentina and opened up shop in Gotham City.
I don't know
Um,
that backstory, but yeah, that
Is
makes a
that
lot of
is
sense.
that was that really your
reinstate the Axis powers? Yeah.
that was really your thinking though? Really? Is that, or you kidding with us?
No, I'm just messing with you right now.
Okay. Oh, good. Sorry, I was just wanting to make that clear. Okay.
If you start to wonder at some point, is he being facetious? Chances are he's being facetious.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I was like, this is making a lot of sense right now.
Wait a minute.
The Nazis are evil. They would make an evil chemical plant.
But here's since the 40s. It creeps
No,
through.
I can make up my own backstory like on the spot. As we go.
Woo! That's great.
We'll
Okay.
just put that out there, make it exclusive. People will report on it on the blog. Say this is the official backstory.
No, but I
Scoop,
remember vividly reading Alan's draft for The Killing Joke, which is it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever had a chance to see it.
I've read
But
it.
it's like 180 pages long. It's for I guess a 45 page comic book. What is the
Yeah,
the
it
length of
feels
series?
like it takes
And
him 2 pages to describe the first panel.
yeah, the level of detail in it was just astonishing to me. And when Denny O'Neil came to me and said, do you want to write a comic for DC? I said, well, I don't really know the format or anything like that. And he says, well, have you ever read one? I say, yeah, I read Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. And he goes like, well, the principle by which I work is I try to have like a page of typescript equal to a page of the comic. And so I was trying to digest that, and I said, I don't think Alan, I don't think Alan knew that it was supposed to be the way you do it.
Not at all. But
It's one of the most entertaining reads you can imagine, just from his digressions. He wants to tell you, why he thinks Batman should have stubble.
yeah.
all this kind of stuff like that. First time you see Batman in close up, he's got to have stubble, and it looks like 2 days of stubble instead of not 1 day of stubble, not 3 days of stubble. It looks like he has 2 days of stubble, and there's a complicated explanation for why when Alan first saw Batman, he was prepubescent, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll have to go back to read that. But yeah, I remember just reading it, being like, "Are you kidding me?" But also like, this is why he's Alan Moore. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's why.
2 days of stubble, not a wizard beard.
Right,
Not
right. You
right.
are. No,
Okay.
no Gandalf shit here.
No Gandalf shit. You shall pass. Okay, so you described in an interview with Back Issue that your conception of Batman was influenced by samurai movies and by the code of Bushido. To strike when to strike is right. To die when to die is right. You also created the character of Tsunetomo in Batman Blind Justice, named after Tsunetomo of the Hagakure. Were there any specific samurai films that you watched that influenced your take on Batman?
Boy, yeah, a lot of them. I've always been a samurai enthusiast. One story I can tell you is that when Tim Burton was up in San Francisco with me, and we were kind of like pacing around on the floor trying to get this draft knocked out. I would put on Yojimbo for him. Not so much for the fight sequences or anything like that, but for the theme song. I love the theme, the opening credits theme for Yojimbo, which is bum 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 bum.
Yeah.
And I was saying, like, wouldn't that be cool if Batman's theme was something like that? So I was trying to sell some of the non-samurai aspects of samurai movies because I felt like it really sort of captured the feel of, like you're doing something you're not supposed to do, and you look over your shoulder, like here's this hulking thing coming at you with wings and ears.
Mhm.
And didn't sell them on that particular one, but
Does Tim
Oh,
Burton
no, into a
like
different
samurai
direction.
movies at all? Do you know?
I assume he did.
Yeah.
We'd sit there and watch him, and he
He
didn't
didn't complain.
piss him off or anything like that. He wasn't
Okay.
saying like, "Come on, let's put something else on."
Okay.
And I was, the other thing that I was pressing for is like, we need a guy to design our stunts. Jackie Chan. Let's get Jackie Chan. And Jackie
I
Chan had not really broken in America yet.
oh,
Oh,
right,
not
And
yet.
right, right,
Yeah.
right.
yeah, because it
Yeah.
was still, I had been sneaking over to um, the theaters over in Chinatown in San Francisco. Were showing Hong Kong movies, and so I was getting to see. I would go over there and see Armor of God, and I'd see Police Story 2 and all of this stuff like that, and just those amazing gags. And there's one just really insane fight sequence in Armor of God, which is Jackie Chan trying to fight off 3 female warriors who are coming at him in stiletto heels. And I was just, I was just worshiping at the altar of Jackie Chan at that moment. And so, I thought, man, if we could get, if we could get an American movie with this kind of kinetic action in it, we got it made.
I've said several times on this podcast that I feel like a lot of American-made movies. Sometimes it just feels like the script says insert fight here, and it's just a fight in a movie. There's nothing interesting about it at all. Like the kung fu stuff with Jackie Chan and some of the Japanese stuff. It's just I don't know. There's more of a emphasis on movement or something. They pay more attention to movement, or I don't know what it is. The choreography is just better, I think, a lot of the time. So I
Yeah,
really
no,
agree
absolutely,
with you. Yeah.
absolutely. And I didn't know. I had been writing, the stuff I've been writing had been mostly comedies before I got onto Batman. And so, I didn't know how much detail you're supposed to put into a fight scene. And I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like trying to think up, the gags, who swings, who misses, what do they hit, all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And people were kind of shocked that I was like putting in beats in
Right.
fight scenes because the normal thing to do was apparently just to say like they have a big fight.
So that maybe that's because you're stepping on the toes of the fight choreographer, basically.
Probably so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably to do that is probably the equivalent of saying what the angles should be. What the
Yeah,
camera
yeah.
angles should
I
be in the
gotcha.
script.
I
So
gotcha.
Yeah.
I can understand that, but I think that sometimes when it's like, especially super realistic or something, it loses some of the fun. And we don't need to have like ridiculous Adam West fights in the next Batman movie, but I don't know, just something more dynamic. I'm not sure what I'm even trying to say anymore, but something more dynamic, something more interesting as far as the fights are.
John Wick.
John Wick's pretty dynamic. Yeah, that was good.
Mhm.
Those those movies are just so and it's not just the choreography, it's the it's the grounding in the physical space where things
Right.
take place that sells you on the absurd action that you're seeing, because you actually believe that the way that those scenes are constructed, the way you know where everything is, you know where everybody is, where you know who's popping out from behind where, and all this kind of stuff like that, and that's what enables you to believe that you could have a single guy who is beset by 42 thugs who are all trying to kill him with guns, and he can take them all out.
Mm.
And it's like when you say, okay, we're going to have a fight scene with one guy, and here come 42 armed thugs, and he's going to kill 42 armed thugs. That's like absurd. No, you can't do that. But the way that those scenes are staged in John Wick, they're absolutely compelling because they're so perfectly choreographed and they exist so perfectly within space. And that's that. I can't explain it to my wife because she's seen it. I try to get her to watch these movies. It just looks like a bunch of guys getting shot in the head. It's like,
It's like, you're not wrong, but
no, but it's the way they get shot in the head.
It's the movement. All right.
Exactly.
And it's tactical.
It's ballet.
It's ballet with guns.
there's a dance to it.
Ballet with live ammo.
It's
That is a great way to
badass.
describe it. Yes. So going into some of the cinematic influences, you did cite Dark Passage already, but some of the other ones you've cited, just for the knowledge of our listeners, this is an obscure one I've not seen yet: The Rise and Fall of Legs Diamond, with Legs Diamond being another possible inspiration on Jack Napier.
This is one of my favorite movies from when I was a kid. I don't exactly know why, but I've probably seen it a dozen times.
I'll have to check it out.
I just
It looks cool. Let's see. We have Touch of Evil with Orson Welles' Quinlan, sort of inspiring Lieutenant Eckhart. We've got His Girl Friday with Vicky Vale, originally kind of conceived, it seems, as a sort of Rosalind Russell, Hildy Johnson type character, right down to being introduced with a big hat, which she does not have in the movie, unfortunately, but that would have been a cool callback.
everybody loves a big hat.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of our comments, I couldn't find the comment specifically, but one of our commenters asked about the possibility of Taxi Driver being a inspiration on sort of the Knox and Vicky dynamic of Albert Brooks and Sybil Shepherd. I don't know if necessarily that was part of it, or that just kind of...
I couldn't say that's wrong. I wouldn't say it was I wouldn't say it was a direct influence, because it's not something I was consciously trying to pinch. But now that you say it, obviously is sort of it's the same sort of relationship, where you have this sort of secondary schlub character
Mhm.
played by Albert Brooks, who is trying to impress the beautiful girl and wondering, what does she see in this nut?
Right.
And it's sort of the same scenario played out again. And I wanted to have Knox is a new character too, but I wanted to have somebody who is just one of the devices that I like when I'm putting together a story is to have a character who is basically not charismatic, who is not the lead character, who is not necessarily even a likable character. Could even be like 40% villain character. It could be an adversary to the hero, who nonetheless is saying the right stuff. He's saying like, wait a minute, this guy's crazy.
Mhm.
And, wait a minute, what this guy's doing is completely illegal. And what's going on here? And the audience, of course, who's in on the joke is going to think like, well, this guy is just an obstacle. He's a schlub. He's the person who's going to get brushed off. But, he also is the guy who happens to be right
Mhm.
in everything he says. And so I always like giving that sort of giving that sort of shtick to a character who is not necessarily the one you're supposed to value,
That's really
who is
interesting,
kind of
though.
the
Yeah.
one that you're, yeah,
Yeah.
Like
No.
the straight man to the, I don't know,
yeah,
like
exactly.
in comedy, kind of, instead of the straight man to the funny man, it's a straight man to the crazy man, maybe.
Yes, very good. Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly the dynamic. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. We also have Dark Passage, as you cited. I specifically watched this movie. One, I found out about this connection. It is also really great once I saw it, but I did not really know about it until this was pointed out to me. Also, the original death of Ricorso seems very similar to The Godfather with the revolving door.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you mentioned to challenge the scholars in the back issue interview, saying challenging us to catch a lift from the classic movie The Palm Beach Story from your 1986 draft, and I think I figured out which one it is, which is
All right, let's hear your crazy theory.
my crazy theory is the deleted scene from your 86 draft where Alicia Hunt tries to sneak into her apartment only to find out that the rent's already been paid off by Jack
You are the man.
Nicholson. So again, had not heard about this movie beforehand, watched it, really got a kick out of it, was completely thrown by the twist ending. But mainly watched this
It's
just
one
to
of the
find
it's
out
one
what
of
it
the
is.
craziest twisteroos
It is insane. Yeah.
in
I was like,
movie
wait, what?
history. I mean, Preston Sturges did not lack for cojones. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he was a madman too. So,
That's awesome.
but
I
yes,
have to see that.
over to Andrew.
Okay. You had we actually covered this maybe partly already, but you
Oh,
had
yeah,
mentioned in
definitely.
the interview that Jeanette Kahn felt that Batman was too brutal in the original drafts and you went back and changed them. Do you happen to remember the general idea of what things you were asked to tone down? It seems like Batman's drugged
Hmm.
ninja wheels in your draft, for example, were completely cut.
Yeah, I think some of it is just kind of his weaponry. I know I did have like a thing where he had like knives that would come out of his glove or something like that, and she was like, no, 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 that's
Oh
Wolverine.
yeah.
And a few things like that, but I don't think there was truthfully, I don't remember the comment beyond her wanting you know the weaponry to be more sort of ingenious and I guess and more Batman specific than some of the stuff I'd thrown in there. I mean, if you get the throwing stars and so forth and so on, you can tell that the screenwriter has probably seen the armor of God in the last couple of months.
That's awesome.
Jackie Chan influence on Batman '89 exclusive for us. I'm actually gonna. There's a question I didn't write here that just came to me on this because you're mentioning Batman's weaponry. Um, you know, there were a couple instances in comics where Batman had a grappling gun, but it seemed like it's this movie that really solidifies the grappling gun in Batman's arsenal that then sort of continues on from there. What sort of led to that creation being like, okay, this is how we have to do it. Let's not do the Adam West thing where he swings the rope over.
Specifically, all right. This is going to be a little involved. Okay, you're going to regret asking this question.
Uh-oh.
The first scene I wrote was the opening with with the head fake where you think, oh, this is Bruce Wayne's parents being killed, but it turns out not to be Bruce Wayne's parents being killed. It's like another version of Bruce Wayne's parents, and he steps in and intervenes in his Batman way.
Mhm.
And the next scene that I wrote for the movie was the Joker falling out of the cathedral at the end.
Oh.
So, I had my beginning scene and I had my end scene, and then I just had a big hole that I had to fill in. So that made it
Wow.
much easier
That
for
sounds
me.
like.
But the first scene that I put into the hole was the one where he tries he needs to get he and Vicky are in a jam,
Uh,
and we need to get out of here right away. And how do we get out? We can't go that way. We can't go this way. The only way we can go is up. And I'm still doing stuff. I mean, you can see it in Batman '89. I'm still doing stuff where Batman goes up to get out of
mhm.
a jam. And so, the question then became practically, how does he get up to get out of a jam? How does he go? And well, he's okay. He swings on ropes and stuff like that, but you've got to be up high in order to swing on a rope to get out of danger. So how do you
Mhm.
get high? And the only way I could figure out that he would be able to get high, is all right.
Not that way, but
And
yes.
kids, I know what you're thinking here, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Smoking
The
Richard
only way that
Donner's
he would be
weed.
able, the only way that he would be able to get himself off the ground is if he had some kind of real mechanism. If he had some kind of thing that he could fire that would pull him upward. And so that's where that came from. It's just like, you always see Batman swinging from a rope,
Mhm.
all this kind of stuff like that. But how does he get up there to begin with? Um, and I wanted like a quick delivery system that would get him up to the rooftop as quickly as possible. And that was where that came from.
I don't regret asking that question at all. I think that's a very cool origin of that because of
Well, wait a minute.
the
In that case, let me
comics.
give you a different answer.
All right, never mind then. But yeah, no, that's awesome. We're going to get into even more deep cuts here because I have a few questions on the 86 script in terms of a few things that I believe are Easter eggs that you might have thrown in here. So in the movie, Knox famously gets a drawing from the cartoonist Bob, who was supposedly meant to be a cameo for Bob Kane. However, I noticed that in your script, the character was named Jerry. So I'm wondering, is that a Jerry Robinson shout out?
This is another short answer. Yes.
Yes.
Mm.
Wanted to verify. Also notable that there is a bespectacled colleague in the newsroom named Clark, which I thought was fun as well. So that's pretty cool. And then the next question.
Why was that interesting?
Well, he might be somebody. Might be somebody of importance at some point. Nice little Easter
Never
egg.
thought of that.
Could be some potential for that character in the future,
That was a joke. I caught it this time.
All right. Andrew has the next question.
Okay. Is it true that the models Joker killed were originally named Patsy Walker from Marvel Comics and Katie Keene from Archie Comics?
Yeah, we heard it. We heard about that from Warner Brothers.
Oh,
We
really?
got through about probably 3 drafts, and then Warner Brothers came back to us and said, "Wait a minute."
Amazing.
You're trying to sneak that one in there, huh?
Yeah.
Uh,
Sometimes it works.
Right.
so we got the Jerry Robinson shout out, Clark, these two. Do you recall any others that we might have missed in terms of like other like snuck in comic type of Easter egg type things?
Oh boy, I'm sure there are some, but you should probably check with Quinones. He would.
Okay.
Boy,
Well,
I would. I could. I'm sure if I were to, go through the script again, which I, haven't actually read in couple of decades, probably.
Understandable.
I'm sure I would. I'm sure I would find other things that I tossed in there, but I don't have any to give you off the top of my head. If I think of any as we go along,
No worries. No
I'll
worries.
let you know.
Uh,
If you ask me some embarrassing question I don't want to answer, I'll go, "Wait a minute! I just realized."
we might have that. We'll see.
That's right. It could happen.
Let's see. The next one we have is about Harvey Dent. So it seems like chronologically, when I go through all this type of stuff, you may have been the first one to come up with the idea that Harvey Dent is Bruce Wayne's friend. I could not find any previous comic where that was established outside of him being an ally to Batman, but not necessarily being friends with Bruce. And in your draft, there's a scene between Bruce and Harvey that was not in the final movie, where Bruce tries to convince Harvey to raid Ace Chemicals or stop the anniversary celebration, and Harvey responds, "I'm just a DA. I don't have access to all your quote expert sources." So is that line meant to indicate that Harvey knows Bruce is Batman, or am I just reading too much into it and he's just criticizing Bruce for trying to give him a tip there?
That's one of those lines that you throw in there for people to go like, "Hey, wait a minute, does he know something?"
Mm,
And it depends. It depends on what you need down the line.
Oh,
It's
uh,
one of those. I always wanted to do more with Harvey.
yeah.
And one of the things that surprises me occasionally, I find myself watching Batman '89 again because I go to some thing where they want me to talk or whatever, and I
Mm,
sit through the movie, which I find in some ways great fun and in some ways kind of painful. And one of the things that always surprises me is that the initial party thrown at Wayne Manor where we meet Bruce for the first time,
mhm,
not Batman, but Bruce, um, is let's raise some money for the bicentennial celebration of Gotham City. Whereas I always forget that it's not a fundraiser for Harvey Dent's campaign, which is what it was in the original draft, and
mm,
it always kind of surprises me. And so, you know, Bruce is working a little bit behind the scenes as a concerned citizen and a donor, and
mm,
all this kind of stuff to install, people that he thinks will help in his crusade. And that's why he's backing Harvey's campaign, because he thinks Harvey is going to be is going to be the strong moral force
mhm.
um, that we need in Gotham City to um, arrest vigilantes. I don't know. I guess
Right.
I guess that's not what he was thinking, but
Maybe not. Yeah.
yeah, but
But yeah, no, years before Dark Knight did it, it was in your script. So
yep.
uh,
right.
over to Andrew.
Okay. Daniel Waters was not aware until after the release of Batman Returns that the Batman 66 show had an episode where the Penguin ran for mayor. We were wondering if you had been familiar with the Batman 66 episodes in which Cesar Romero's
Dishonor the
Joker.
penguin. Dishonor the penguin.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Ruins the paintings with other
I
paintings.
was a religious watcher of the Batman '66 uh,
That's good to hear.
TV series, and I kind of wish I had kept them. I had a little notebook in which for every episode of or every 2-part episode of Batman, I would draw the villain, and I
Ooh.
wrote underneath my drawing of the and my drawings were kind of my I didn't want to be a screenwriter. I want to be a cartoonist.
Mhm.
And I never, I never really had a style. I could sort of do a house style, but I couldn't do it. I didn't have my own style. And I did draw uh, every single villain after I'd watched the episodes that week, and I would put underneath the names of the 2 episodes. So yeah, I did a drawing of Burgess Meredith as the Penguin with His Honor the Penguin and Dishonor the Penguin. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome. Uh,
Awesome.
so do you remember the one with? Because we were wondering if you had recalled or if there was an influence of the episode where Romero's Joker ruins the paintings.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. That's and that again is one of the things that feeds into the whole aesthetic
Mhm.
of the Joker, where it's like, okay, I'm disfigured. Now we're gonna see like great art disfigured because the art is in the disfigurement.
Mhm.
And it's again, the whole world is now going to have to adopt his aesthetic.
Mhm.
Is the gag of the character.
Yeah. I really love that sort of creepy twist on the whole dynamic of that when he does that as the making everybody turn into him
Yeah.
basically.
Hmm.
Uh, moving on to the next part, there were a lot of changes that we've covered on this show between your draft and the final film. Bruce Wayne being more of the sort of traditional smooth playboy, and there was more insight of what he was going through emotionally. Joker, as you brought up, was made to be the killer of the Waynes when he was the same age as Bruce in your script. You also did not have Alfred let Vicky Vale into the Batcave. Vicky Vale was more of a
Before
central.
anyone asks, why did Alfred let Vicky Vale into the Batcave? The answer is, I don't know.
You didn't write that part. We pretty much chalk it up to like it's got. We pretty sure it's like on-set rewrites where like we were.
Oh yeah,
we have
yeah,
this
no,
set.
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
you know, if I were Bruce, you know, it's like, okay, Alfred, I know you've been my loyal family retainer for the last, you know, 35 years, whatever, but your bony ass is fired. Good luck in your next endeavor.
Do you still feel that way? Yeah, with Vicky already knowing the secret, though.
Well, yeah, I know, but
Okay. Let's see. And then Knox, of course, is a lot more complex of a character in your original version of him. I think I was shocked the first time I read it, where I'm just like, wait, he knows, and he also does this, and he dies. What? As I read through all of it, I was just amazed. I know a lot of the rewrites weren't yours due to the writer's strike, but do you remember why some of these changes even happened in the first place? I mean, it seems like there was a lot of great stuff here that was not in the final version.
well, you know, there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff that got cut for budgetary reasons. There's a lot of stuff that got cut because, you know, the sort of, I guess, the dynamic among the actors. It's you know, it's part of making movies. Is you always start to see that, oh, there are some things that really work. These bits, you know, these things really sizzle, and those things are not so exciting. And you know, there's always course adjustments that you make in the course of filming, to emphasize the parts that you think are going to be kind of electrifying, you know, for an audience. And a lot of that stuff happened because of that. And a lot of it was just because, you know, they ran way over budget, and Warner Brothers, which had initially wanted to make the movie for something like, I think their below the line budget was initially something in the area of $20 million, which was a lot of money at the time. It was, you know, a good amount of money at the time, but it wasn't, you know, sort of blockbuster money. They didn't know they were going to have a blockbuster.
Mhm.
And you know, that's where Robin went. That's where the whole sequence of, you know, Batman on horseback, which leads into the introduction of Robin, went. You know, there's this big confrontation between Batman and the Joker, where Batman is Bruce Wayne basically gets caught without his costume, which is an idea that I've always wanted to use. I've always wanted to sort of go in with the dealing with the practicalities of being Batman. It's like, okay, does he like carry around a suitcase with a bat suit in it just in case he needs to change, or does he actually go out to parties every once in a while? Does he go to a restaurant? You know, does he live enough of a normal life that every now and then he's going to get caught without his costume? And we had, you know, I had one scene originally where he sees like the Joker using mimes to do a killing, and he's out here in the middle of Gotham Square, and he doesn't have a costume. There's really nothing he can do, and so all he can do is just sort of like flip out, like, you know, I want to take 6 of these guys out, but I can't because I'm Bruce Wayne. I'm not my alter ego.
Right.
And later on, he meets the Joker at Vicky's apartment. And, you know, again, the Joker is making off with Vicky, and he's stranded and he doesn't have his costume. And so he pulls on a ski mask that he finds in her drawer, goes up over the roof, commandeers a horse. And there's a whole complicated sequence where he's like charging on this horse through Gotham City, and a yellow Volkswagen is going up, like, you know, the Gotham equivalent of West End Avenue. And you find out with all this intercutting that's going on that the yellow Volkswagen is Alfred, whom he has summoned to deliver his laundry. You know, Alfred pitches a, you know, brown paper parcel out of the window of the Volkswagen, which Bruce snags as he's riding past on the horse. And the next thing you see is the Joker looking in the rearview mirror of his van, and like, holy shit, here's Batman in full regalia coming at him on a horse. Which is one of the images that I was really keen to pinch from Frank Miller from The Dark Knight Returns.
Oh yeah.
That and the why do you think I wear a target on my chest?
Mm-hmm.
Or the two things that I really really wanted to swipe, or I mean homage.
Right.
Did I say? I didn't say swipe.
No,
No, you said homage.
Heavens no. Okay. We asked this to Daniel Waters as well about Batman Returns, but we were wondering, you already covered some of this, but is there anything else from any other things in your drafts that you wish made it into the movie that we haven't covered?
Oh yeah, my favorite thing that we haven't hit yet from the '89 draft is
I think I know.
it's Knox and the Bat Signal.
Okay.
I mean, that to me, I just thought, that was designed to be a moment where the audience just fucking screams, and
Yeah.
like where he concocts the bat signal
Yeah.
as a way of letting Batman know that the balloons are full of poison gas.
Right.
And that's the bit I miss. And I really I have to say, one of the things I really don't like is at the end of the movie where they have Harvey come out with the mayor and say, like, well, we have a letter from Batman here, and he says he's going to help us out in the future, and all of this kind of stuff, so that he becomes sort of like, as Commissioner Gordon used to say on the TV show, a duly deputized officer of the law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to my mind, it's one of the problems that I still have with The Batman, which I think is a really good movie in a lot of ways, has a bunch of great scenes in it. But, the idea that, Batman is something other than a criminal seems to me like a weird kind of sop to, parents and kids and, the morality police. In a way, I mean, I think you have to sort of accept that what Batman is doing is illegal, that he knows what he's doing is illegal, but he nonetheless thinks it's worthwhile. And so he's taking the chance that if he ever gets caught, he's going to be in deep, deep trouble. And, to me, the first thing that I want to see in the Batman is like somebody comes into court with evidence from a crime scene where a guy's been walking around in a cape and a mask and all of this kind of stuff. And they say, like, you gave a guy in a cape and a mask access to this crime scene. Can we call him to testify in front of the jury under oath? And they say, well, no, it's Batman. We don't know who he is. And we just let him come in and solve cases. Case dismissed. Defendant walks. Because
it's probably better than the Arkham Asylum breakouts.
That would be in the real world, as we call it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in your mind, then, the bat signal would not be something that Commissioner Gordon even uses to signal him for help?
The bat signal has always been kind of troublesome. I think the bat signal, the notion that it's on the roof of the Gotham police station is a little dicey. I mean, I can see it being set up in a place where, Commissioner Gordon wanted to meet Batman surreptitiously and say, hey, we got to meet at the usual place,
Right.
We got to meet at Joe's bar or whatever. But I think, as an officially sanctioned method of summoning a vigilante to do the police's work for them, I don't know if I quite buy it. And the other thing is, if we're in the real world, cops hate Batman for the simple reason he doesn't have to do any paperwork.
That's
he's
true.
He's not responsible to the authorities. He's not responsible to the guy above him in the police hierarchy. He doesn't have to like go and explain himself to internal affairs.
Mhm.
He just shows up and drops into the middle of a gang of thugs and beats the hell out of them. So
True.
I can see that
Andrew.
for sure. All right. So yeah, in a reversal, are there things from Warren Scarron and the other writers' work in the Batman 89 film that you do appreciate?
yeah, I mean, I think the Joker has a lot more. He has more sort of trailer lines is the way I think of it.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the lines that people think of as being like the most distinctive lines of the Joker are lines that were added, improvised or written by writers after me. Like, where does he get his wonderful toys?
Hmm.
And all that kind of stuff like that. And I think that stuff is great, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch Nicholson because I realized a couple of viewings ago that he's playing a vaudevillian, and he's a guy he's not playing to the audience because the audience is not hip enough for him. He's surrounded by goons and police and all these things like that. He's not playing to those guys. He's entertaining himself.
Right.
He is trying to keep himself amused, and to me it's a great take on that character. I mean, I just think it's such a smart take on that embittered guy.
No, for sure. But he is his own. He is his number one fan.
Yes, exactly.
So
Right.
definitely. So we do have a lot of.
His shtick is too smart for the house.
I always kind of got that impression too, where some of the things he laughs at, I'm like, why is he laugh? As a kid, where I'm just like, why does he say that? Why does he say this? And then now later on, I'm like, oh, that's what fits it in terms of the psychology of the character. So thank you for the insights on Batman 89, but we are not done yet. We do have other questions on other things that you've worked on. However, we are going to
What? There's more?
break. Yes.
Believe it or not.
Oh.
Just wanted to announce that I have a new podcast called Gaming Gaiden. It's about retro gaming. It's a lot about Japanese to English translation. In this first season, it will be 10 episodes each season. First season will be dropping soon, much sooner than I'm on a Recon. The co-host for this one will be Mike Torres. If you saw the ranking every Superman video game two-parter we did here on Superhero Stuff You Should Know, you have seen Mike before. So yes, if you like video games, if you've been interested in Japanese ever, we're going to be talking a lot about just Japan in general, Japanese cultural differences as well, and we also are going to have a lot of talk about 90s video game magazines such as Electronic Gaming Monthly, aka EGM, so stay tuned for that. So please be on the lookout for Gaming Gaiden podcast coming soon.
Hi, it's me, Jeremy Parrish, co-host of the Retronauts podcast, the only video game history podcast that's been around so long, it's also a part of video game history. Every week, one of the motley rabble who host this show leads a deep dive into the past, whether it's to break down a classic franchise, learn more about a timeless game from its creator, or just wallow in nostalgia. Relive history with Retronauts, here on the HyperX Podcast Network.
The award-winning Go Nintendo podcast is the best place to get the latest news on the world of Nintendo. We cover the biggest stories, share impressions of the latest games, and answer your burning questions. There's also some general pop culture talk, game music trivia, a heaping helping of silliness, and did I mention our robot companion?
I'm the star of the show.
Catch new episodes of the Go Nintendo podcast every Saturday on the HyperX Podcast Network.
What's that? Majestically cresting the horizon as it makes its way into port. Why, it's the brand new HyperX Armada monitors, mounts, and arms. Both the HyperX Armada 25 and 27 gaming monitors come bundled with a sturdy HyperX Armada mount and arm. If you need every split second of advantage when gaming, the Full HD Armada 25 and its 240Hz refresh rate are for you. If you like to soak in the graphical majesty of your gaming, you'll be eyeing the Quad HD Armada 27 with an 165Hz refresh rate. Set sail for HyperX.com or Amazon.com to start making your display Armada.
Hello, fans. As part of the HyperX Podcast Network, we're letting you know that this year is HyperX's 20th birthday. To celebrate, they're offering some great deals on their award-winning gaming gear. If you're in the market for a new headset, a new microphone, blue light blocking eyewear, or any number of other high-quality HyperX products, head on over to hyperx20.com to check out all the birthday deals. Once again, check out the HyperX 20th birthday sale over at hyperx.com.
Why are you boys messing with that penguin?
And we're back, and Sam Hamm is still here, and he's going to join us to
He
talk
didn't leave
about
us.
a few other things after 89. One of the other things I definitely want to talk about is Batman Blind Justice. This is the 50th anniversary issues of Detective Comics that you wrote, that very significant in the mythos that not a lot of people really talk about as much as other things. Some have noted that it predates Nightfall, that it has a blonde man who sort of takes over the cowl for a little bit after a hulking monster dude sort of puts Batman out of commission. So that was an interesting thing. But even more than that is the fact that there are insights into Bruce's training into this issue. The second one, introducing Ducard, Sunetomo, Chu Chin Lee, a lot of the mentors in establishing that Bruce went around the world for his training and stuff. So one of the questions I had was that I imagined, with the task of having to write the anniversary issues for Detective Comics, I'm sure there was a lot of pressure, and there were a lot of different stories that you had in mind for that. I think I had read a few interviews where Denny O'Neil thought one idea was similar to Steve Englehart's treatment for the movie, and then I think you might have mentioned another instance where it was originally at some point about how the Waynes got their money, which I think carries over into the Batman 2 script. So I guess, could you talk about some of the possible alternatives that we could have gotten that were, I guess, variations before you landed on Blind Justice?
Yeah, well, it was like it was the result of an interview that I was doing with not sure who it was. I don't want to say, because I think I'm probably going to get the wrong person. But it was one of the interviews that I was doing at the time that the movie was about to come out, and the interviewer told me that they had spoken to Denny O'Neil, and Denny O'Neil said, "Wow, if this guy ever wanted to write a comic book, we would love to have him do that." And I thought, like, I was like, I could write a comic book for DC, and I was like, I'm a decrepit, aged, overgrown kid. And so I'm a kid who's sort of with an aluminum walker kind of deal. But I was like just so like stunned and flattered, at the thought you could do a DC comic. And I said, boy, I would love to do a DC comic. And so, the next thing I know, DC is getting a hold of me. We're talking about doing a comic, and it never occurred to me not to do it. And I was out of the continuity, because I hadn't been reading comic books seriously for, at this point, probably 15 years. I read comics religiously all through the 60s into the early 70s. And then, you go off and start doing other stuff. And so I wasn't terribly familiar with all the places where the Batman continuity had gone, but I wanted to write a story that would be in the continuity of the comics. I wanted to write a comic book Batman, who in my mind was something entirely different from the movie Batman. The movie Batman was going to be an attempt to introduce the character to a new generation of moviegoers, and not necessarily comics fans, but, general moviegoers who sort of knew about the character, but, thought of the character maybe in terms of the TV show, thought of the character mainly in terms of the comic book that they read when they were kids, or, maybe they just heard of Batman. They'd heard of Batman and Robin or something like that. and didn't know much more about it than that. And so in terms of the movie, it was all about thinking, how do you introduce this character and his world and, stuff for a general audience. But, at the same time, I got this offer from DC, and I wanted to do a different version of Batman where you don't have to establish, all this stuff about who he is, how he works, why he is the way he is. And you could just get, you could tell a story that was a comic book story, as opposed to as opposed to, something that a general audience would be expected to go for. And so I started talking with Denny, saying like, well, do you want to do something like kind of definitive about where Batman comes from? What is, have we ever figured out, have you ever done anything about, okay, here's this kid, he's the heir to a, multi-million-dollar fortune. Is there a custody battle? Are there umpty-nine relatives and, friends of the family and all these people descending out of the woodwork to try and take this kid under their wing so that they can have access to the Wayne family fortune at some point down the line? Are there conservators? Are there, all this kind of stuff? And, we talked about that for a while, and he thought that was kind of interesting. And I said, well, why are the Waynes so rich? What did they do? How did they get to be so rich? Is that, something that might be an interesting story? And it might be an interesting story. And so then I said, like, well, how about, his training? You usually see like there's one panel where he's the bat comes through the window and he goes like, that's it. I shall become a creature of the night. Criminals are a cowardly, superstitious lot. That seemed to be the thing that he responded to the most. And so, I started thinking about how you could construct a story that would throw in that information, but not to do it as a, now we return to, the origins of Bruce Wayne, so forth and so on. I wanted to have like a contemporary story, something that's happening to him right now in the context of the ongoing comic, that would give you an excuse to go back and explain, what he'd been doing through all this, through his formative years, when he's basically learning the skills that will allow him to become the Batman. And so that's where that came from. And again, I'm telling you, I'm sure you guys have read the backstory interview with back issue interview. I'm sorry, that I did with Michael Cronenberg. And the reason we have a brain switching story.
Oh yes,
Blind Justice it's Gorilla Boss.
Yes,
it's Gorilla Boss. All about Gorilla Boss.
It's your realistic update to Gorilla Boss.
That's right. I said, all right, I'm not doing a movie for an audience of grown-ups and normal people. Now I get to do Gorilla Boss.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like the Keaton version of the character went through the same mentors as Bruce did in Blind Justice?
Never occurred to me, because I thought the Keaton stuff preceded Blind Justice, and to me, it's like, I hate to get into discussions of what's canonical and what's not canonical, all that kind of stuff. But to me, they're like two different universes.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, I've always sort of interpreted the armory room in the movie to be like places he collected from his training, in terms of just like the reason why he was in Japan in the first place was for martial arts, but also he collected some sweet samurai armor that Alexander Knox and Vicky Vale are going to admire later on. But that's
it's stuff like that where you get to you're dropping hints. You're saying like, it's like, where would a guy come up with this?
Right. Yeah, he wasn't over there just collecting.
Yeah.
For sure. That's how I always read it as well.
Yeah.
So have you followed other comic versions of your mentor characters for Batman, like Tsunetomo or Ducard?
Not closely. No, I will be honest with you. You know, I don't. I'm glad that other people are doing things with those characters.
Yeah.
But I'm not familiar enough. I don't know how many variations there are. I remember I think I shot an email to Denny O'Neil when Batman Begins came out. I said, like, holy shit, Denny! It turns out that your supervillain's secret identity is my supervillain.
Yes.
You're like, who knew?
Yeah.
So, but
There is
know-
another twist I thought I would share with you about Ducard, actually, that just came to me, which is there's a Batman and the Shadow crossover comic by Steve Orlando and Scott Snyder. And in that version, Ducard is also the secret identity of the Shadow, who then trains Bruce Wayne.
get out of here.
Which then explains how there's so many similarities between Bruce Wayne and Ken Allard, Lamont Cranston. So that I love that, even though like it's not what I personally think when I read Blind Justice. I'm just like, oh, this is the Shadow because this guy's. I know the Shadow is somewhat amoral, but he's not that amoral. So, but I still like the idea of the Shadow training Bruce Wayne.
You guys, I'm sure know of a writer named Philip Jose Farmer.
It sounds familiar.
Track down Philip Jose Farmer because he is a guy who used to basically sort of work off of the premise that all of the great pulp heroes were interrelated and involved with one another. And so, he would tell you how Tarzan was actually a distant cousin of Doc Savage, who was a distant cousin of the Shadow, who was, et cetera, et cetera. And he worked out all these, complicated relationships that were consistent with internal evidence in the stories, even though stories were written by different people and had nothing to do with each other.
Right.
But he did this incredibly ingenious sort of job of this is a verb I've learned recently, retconning.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
All of the great pulp heroes. So
We just talked about this on our Patreon a couple like weeks ago or something, where it would be their Warner Brothers seems to hate money because they could have this like pulp universe with all the historical characters, and I don't know, maybe even
If they have the rights.
if they have the rights, it'd be cool. It'd be really cool if they were to kind of do that, have an old school universe there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't bring you onto a show called Superhero Stuff You Should Know without at least covering a little bit of Watchmen. So you have
Be my guest.
you had the unenviable task of being the first screenwriter to adapt this into a film, streamlining a lot of the original comic. I thought you did an admirable job, considering like trying to condense that into a 2-hour film is a hell of a task in itself. My main question, and I realize I'm kind of jumping ahead because we have not covered this in our show yet, but what leads to the change in the ending for Watchmen? Is that a studio note? Is that your personal take on how the story should end on that? Like, I was curious about that because that definitely stood out to me. I understand like you do have a prologue in there establishing the superheroes, which I completely understand. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, this is really different. And I was curious where that came from.
Because I went to, I was sitting with Joel Silver,
Mhm.
who was the original producer of the project. And I said, now, the end of the comic comes from Outer Limits episode. I said, this is, I saw it when I was a kid, and I had an issue of Famous Monsters of Film with the monster from that episode.
Mhm.
And I said, the ending is, I think the writer was Meyer Dolinsky, I want to say, of an episode called The Architects of Fear. And it's a deal where they create an invading spaceman that they're going to drop at the UN. And when the people of Earth see that there is this invasion force headed their way, they will unite, and they will,
Mhm.
drop all of their, they'll drop their sabers, and they will unite against this common foe. And I said, you know, and the problem is that Alan references that episode at the end of Watchmen. He has people sitting and watching that particular episode in issue 12 of Watchmen, and so there's no defense,
Right.
you know, and he's bless his heart, he's an honorable guy. And somebody said, well, wait a minute, this is an awful lot like an Outer Limits episode, and he remembered having seen the Outer Limits episode.
Oh.
If you guys have been around at the time, you could have said, Alan, have you seen an Outer Limits episode called The Architects of Fear? And he would have to go back and say, now that you mention it, yes. Holy cow. But, once he realized where the inspiration for this had probably come from, he gives him a shout out. But the problem is, if you make what would have cost probably $120, $140 million movie even back then, and you release it and it has a borrowed ending, and you can prove that the people who made the movie know where it's borrowed from, then you're going to have major legal issues. And so, I said, let's try something different. And I think they came up with a smart solution in the final movie where it's basically a matter of framing.
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan. I mean, I thought that was a clever idea. I would have been happy with that if I'd come up with it. But it was, it basically is just trying to get out from under the problem of, okay, here's where we have announced that the ending comes from.
That's really interesting because I've always known that connection, but I didn't realize that would have led to reasons why they would want to change it in all these iterations. Because I noticed, obviously the change in this script as well as the change in the movie, but I didn't realize that a lot of that was tied into the fact that the Outer Limits connection was known.
It's my favorite show from when I was a child. So
I thought that was.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I thought that was like something Snyder chose to do for his version of the movie. I did not know about all the Outer Limits connections.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Were you ever a part of discussions on potential casting for the Watchmen characters?
Oh yeah, but that was this was way back in the distant past. I was one of the great regrets of my life is David Bowie invited me to dinner once because he wanted to play Rorschach, and it was
Rorschach.
Wow.
Yeah, it was I couldn't go. I had something else I couldn't get out of, and I've spent the rest of my life going like, shit, I could have gone and had dinner with David Bowie. It's like,
that would have been interesting casting because the moment you said it, I was thinking Adrian, but then I'm like, oh, that would have definitely would have flipped things over if he was Rorschach.
Yeah.
I had also read something about Arnold as Dr. Manhattan, but I don't know how serious they were about that, and I don't know if I can see that.
That's like sort of like the obvious,
Yeah.
Okay.
Naked buff guy.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
Give it to Arnold.
naked, muscular, godlike figure. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I can picture that accent with these lines about being indifferent to humanity.
Come on, would you buy him as governor of California?
Oh man.
So
yeah.
Over on to Batman 2. Or Batman Returns, but it was originally Batman 2 in the draft that you wrote. We haven't found a lot of interviews about your time writing for this script, which obviously influenced the final film as well as the Batman 89 comic. So could you share a bit about that process and your perspective on terms of like why did this version not make it to the final film?
Oh, it's just I think it's just a deal where Tim was not available to he was off doing other stuff, and he was not so much there to help sort of craft it to his strengths the way that he was the first time around, and he was not that keen to do another Batman movie. Is my understanding anyway, and I don't want to misrepresent him or say anything.
Daniel Waters kind of reaffirmed that too.
Out of school, yeah, but he did not really want to do another Batman movie, and they were throwing money at him, and he didn't want the money. And they say, well, finally, what can we do to make you do this? They said, what? And their final approach was, what if it's not a Batman movie, but what if it's a Tim Burton movie that happens to have Batman?
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of, that set off the necessary firecracker in his brain, and he went in a different direction. He was always sort of more. He was more interested in the villains than in Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
He was always sort of more interested in the setting and the look of the film probably than the psychology of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there were. I got to tell you, there were a couple of bits that I could just like, His Honor the Penguin running for mayor. He had pitched to me a couple of times, like, what if the Joker ran for mayor?
Right. That was
And my whole thing was, okay, well, but where do you go with it?
right.
I mean, it's like, okay, he runs for mayor, and like the people come out and decide to elect him, or they decide not to elect him, and he gets his revenge because they didn't elect him, or it's like, what the. And sadly, we're kind of seeing that play out here in 2020.
Right.
But that's another story.
We also see Joker, the Harley Quinn animated series, actually ended up doing that in this past season.
Yeah.
That is true. All right. Were the characters of the Red Berets inspired by the real-life guardian angels more than the sons of the Batmen in The Dark Knight Returns?
Short answer, yes.
All right.
Okay.
I love these short answers.
Moving on.
I feel like if I give you a short answer, no, I have to explain it. But
When it's a yes, yeah.
if I have a short answer, yes, it's kind of like congratulations.
All right.
You
There's
pegged that one.
There's guardian angels in The Dark Knight too, right? Don't they mention that? They mentioned
I
the
think
dark.
so,
like,
yeah.
They might have mentioned it.
yeah,
Yeah.
brief mention. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we talked previously about cinematic influences on Batman 89. We're getting deep cuts here, but we're talking about some cinematic influences on your take on Penguin specifically. I obviously there's an influence of the birds, with the birds being used to attack, which I feel like it's crazy that they have not done that on the big screen yet in terms of Penguin stuff. I mean, that seems like just an obvious thing to do, but they haven't
It's
done
like,
it. I would love to see it.
if it had been up to me, the studio wanted the Penguin and they wanted Catwoman.
Yeah.
And Catwoman, fine. I'm great with that. But the Penguin is kind of a problematic character. What is the Penguin?
Mhm.
And the Penguin does not have to my mind, a strong sort of. He doesn't have an interesting enough sort of story. He doesn't have an interesting enough sort of psychology to make him a proper Batman villain. And I didn't want to go there. I was desperately trying to find something that makes this guy interesting as an adversary. And I didn't get there, as far as I was concerned. I must say, I thought one of the best things in The Batman is the take on the Penguin. I mean, I thought that was a really kind of cool version of the character, and it's part of it is because he gets to be in a subsidiary position. He gets to be a secondary villain, but he was a really sort of charismatic. Colin Farrell was obviously having a good time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And he
He
was
loved it.
it's one of the best parts.
very charismatic presence. But yeah, no, I felt like I never really cracked the Penguin.
I kind of felt like he was a bit of in your version, sort of Sidney Greenstreet and Maltese
Yeah.
Falcon. You've also got a little bit of the bird statue stuff.
That's not wrong, because you've again got the sort of Maltese Falcon
Mhm.
statuettes that are become the MacGuffin of the story.
Mm-hmm. I do think that, when I read this for the first time, I think I was blown away by just the connections to Batman 89, the use of the sets. I'm like, oh, the Armory Room's back, Flugelheim Museum's back, Vicky's back, like all this stuff. But even more than that, the fact that it is tying into what you said earlier, it is a Bruce story. It is very much a Bruce Wayne story. We can definitely see that, as much as Burton has been sometimes criticized by people for being more interested sort of in the villains in his movies, we can see in your scripts that you were very interested in Bruce's psychology, where he was, where the money comes from in the Wayne legacy, him having to deal with that. And more than that, if they went with your version, Keaton's Batman would have gotten to display detective skills, which, people have, claimed they're just like, well, they didn't really do it until the Batman. I'm like, we could have gotten it. We could have gotten it with the sequel. But to sort of continue the praise train on your script here. We thought you might get a kick out of some of the fan art that some of our fans
don't feel that you need to slow down on the praise train.
Well, we're going to continue. We're going to speed forward on it. Actually,
all aboard.
Some of our fans, some of it by our request, but some of our fans have done some fan art made from your Unmade ideas, either from the script or other ones that you've talked about. So 3 of them are from one of our patrons and fans, Logan Wood. This first one is
please tell me that your fans have not been doing fan art based on ideas that I haven't told anybody yet.
Oh no.
that could get us all in deep trouble.
I don't know that much, Sam.
if you guys have that technology,
well, we wouldn't be running this podcast at that point.
All right.
So, Logan did this, which is you've said in an interview with I think it was Den of Geek, about how when you were asked about, hey, could you bring Joker back, and then you turned it into the origin of Two-Face.
Yeah, exactly. So you wheel Joker into the courtroom in a full body cast, which turns out to conceal a bomb in it.
Yeah,
and because he knows that Batman will be there to watch his humiliation. And if he blows up the whole courtroom, he's going to get Batman. That's the idea.
Also, I know Logan has it with Nicholson's head in there because I requested it. But if it is in the body cast, then Nicholson can just, do some ADR and just call it a day. He doesn't have to be on set.
That's right.
I thought that was funny too. So we got that. And then from your script, we got Catwoman fighting Batman in the Armory Room, like you have in the finale. And then we also have Penguin taking Vicky hostage in the Batcave, which also happens in the finale there. So those 3 come from Logan. And then one of our fans, the imaginative hobbyist, did a poster for Batman 2 with kind of my fan cast of your versions of the characters. We got Edward Furlong as the kid, Dick Grayson, Tia Carrera as the Eurasian, Selena Kyle, and yours. And my pick was the great Tim Curry as your Sydney Greenstreet type Penguin for this. So,
oh wow, fantastic!
This is your this is kind of a what if scenario from this fan of ours. So I thought you'd get a kick out of seeing these.
Oh, those all incredible so far. I mean, those are fabulous.
So thank you. And thank you guys for sending those over to us in the past.
Yes, thank you.
Let's go into the latest thing, which is the Batman 89 comic. So one of the things that I was curious about is, I know a lot of the origin of this is Joe Quinones making a pitch and then sort of connecting with you and bringing you in as the writer for this. I imagine that there were a lot of different ideas batted around. I know you definitely wanted to do Two-Face because you didn't get to do that. Were there sort of any other story ideas that didn't make it into this that you can talk about?
The pretty much. I mean, we were all on the same page from the start in terms of what we wanted to do. We wanted to make it a story about Harvey Dent. We wanted to introduce the Robin, who would have been a version of the Marlon Wayans character that was initially planned for Batman Returns. And there was some plot stuff that we hashed out that we probably shifted around here and there as we were going through it. I mean, the one thing that I was planning to do was to introduce Harley Quinn, And my big problem was I discovered I only had 6 issues to work with, and I thought I was going to be old Charles Dickens about it, and I was going to write it in a serial fashion. And as it was coming out, I would adjust the future issues to incorporate the stuff that I hadn't gotten into the previous issues, and I wound up running out of issues. And so there was, a bunch of stuff that we had to cut. We had to cut Harley Quinn, and we, dropped in some stuff in the early parts where it seemed like, we were going to bring her back, but we didn't get the chance to. So.
Yeah, because I definitely saw her in the, she's in the Batcave in the
Yeah,
TV
right,
and
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, he's dropping in Easter eggs for that. But it's really interesting, especially because in this world, Joker's gone. So it's sort of just like, how do you bring in Harley into this type of world?
We had a good way.
Okay. Well, hopefully we will get to see that.
That's awesome. Can you say if there was any input from the studio on the comic, considering Keaton was coming back for the Flash?
Oh no, we didn't hear a word. There's
Okay.
no connection between the studio and the comics at all. Yeah. No,
Wow.
It's like,
All right.
I know. I hate to disappoint fandom, which has been trying to figure out what's canonical, what's not canonical, what happens on this earth, what happens on that earth, so forth and so on. But nobody.
Yeah.
The only way I can explain it is that DC Comics and Warner Brothers, the film unit, exist on different Earths.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. There's Earth DC and there's Earth WB.
Right. Those are the true universes.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've seen some people be like, "Are they going to reference Drake Winston in the Flash movie?" I'm like, guys, I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think that. As you said, there's two different.
My feeling is, please, by all means, go right ahead and send me a check afterward.
Most importantly, yes.
I need to renovate my kitchen.
Yes, exactly right. I need new tires. So.
Yeah.
So we've kind of extensively covered how a lot of the ideas from your Batman 2 script do get to sort of come to life in the Batman 89 comic. One of my favorite aspects of this comic is Harvey himself, is Two-Face, how he's fleshed out, how when he's scarred, he's not immediately like, I do crime now. Like there's still a slow descent for that. And I was curious, obviously we know about your idea of the origin story when asked to bring Jack back for Joker, but were some of these ideas ones from way back in 89 or 90 when you had planted Harvey Dent and thought about putting him into a sequel to become Two-Face?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the whole deal with the idea about the Joker blowing himself up in the courtroom. It was just that's an idea I had that got scotched very quickly, and so I still wanted to do Two-Face. It's not the only sort of entry I had into Two-Face. I had a lot of ideas about what the character was about. I mean, one thing is it seemed to me that Two-Face is supposed to be one side good, one side evil, and you hardly ever see Two-Face doing something good. It's like it's always the coin gets flipped, the evil side comes up, and if the good side comes up, he does something neutral, like he doesn't shoot you. But if the bad side comes up, he does shoot you. And I want to say, what if he flips the coin and he has to go out and do something, kind of virtuous? What if there is an actively virtuous half of Two-Face that is at war with the obviously villainous half? And so those were a lot of the things that I was thinking about at the time I was doing it. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world that they cast Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent, And I was just thinking, like, hot shit, I get to do like Billy D. Williams as Two-Face,
Mhm.
a movie from now or 2 movies from now or whatever it is, because I loved Billy D. Williams when I was a kid. I saw him in Brian's Song when I was in high school, and I saw Hit, the Hit with Richard Pryor, and the movies he made with Diana Ross, Mahogany, and Lady Sings the Blues, also with Richard Pryor, and Bingo Long, and all of his stuff. I mean, I just thought he was a cool actor, and I loved his swagger, and so the chance to write that part, after all these years was just irresistible to me.
This really would have been, in my opinion, the best cinematic Two-Face if you had gotten to do this on the screen and stuff. Because I just reading the depth of this version of the character is it's there's so much more to this version of Two-Face than there has been in the film versions, in my opinion. So like I'm glad that we now have this to sort of go off of after Billy D. Williams like 5 minutes into the movie plus the Lego Batman movie. But
Well, yes. Thank you. I mean, I just hope it. I hope it does him justice. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. I had a couple other questions on this comic. We do have the tragic death of Pat Hingle's Commissioner Gordon in this version of the comic, and I was kind of wondering what leads to the decision. I imagine in some way it's just like there has to be an escalation of stakes in the story in terms of what Two-Face does.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things. It's one of the things we were talking about early on. It's sort of like what is going to be a big, sort of distinctive, bold move, and we thought about one of the things that you do is it's like it's when you make a movie of Star Trek. How do you differentiate it from Star Trek, the TV series? Well, you kill Spock.
Yeah.
And everybody goes like, you can't kill Spock. But they did kill Spock. And of course, it didn't take them long to realize that, Spock was kind of the franchise and they brought him back. But, we're doing the same thing with Commissioner Gordon, only we're not going to bring it back.
You're not going to go to another planet where another Gordon is being born and stuff?
Yeah, we're going to go to, Earth Gordon.
Okay.
And,
they're all Gordons.
He's going to come out looking like Gary
Gordons. It's
Oldman.
like everywhere you look, it's a Gordon. Yeah.
Reproduce asexually.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's how you bring back Oldman, J.K. Simmons, Jeffrey Wright,
Yes,
all
exactly.
the Gordons.
Dude, the Gordon verse. It sounds incredible, actually. Into the Gordon verse. Oh man, that's great.
Poor Gordon. And then the last one I have is on. I just wanted a clarification on this because it seems like there's been some confusion by fans online about the note that goes to Barbara, mentioning about being her oracle. It feels to me like this is from Catwoman. Am I wrong in that?
It is from Catwoman.
Okay, well, there we have it, everybody. From Sam
But
Hamm.
it might put some ideas in somebody else's head. You never know.
Yeah, that too. So I think, well, of course, that's the big important part of this beat here emotionally. So like but I think some people have been wondering if this comes from was a posthumous letter from Harvey, or if it was from Batman. I'm just like, oh, no, it seems like it's from Catwoman. But I just wanted to clarify for people who were a little bit confused.
Yeah, for your audience members who are wondering, that is definitely from Catwoman. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. All right.
Andrew. What are your thoughts on the other Batman movies after yours?
I like things about all of them. There are parts that I think are great, and there are things that I think like, well, that's wrong. I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But I mean, to me, it's great fun seeing all these variations on a character. I always talk about, people want to say what's canon, what's not canon. Are Batman and Batman Returns the same universe as Batman Forever? And is Batman Forever in the same universe as Batman and Robin? And what is the continuity here, and what is the
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. And to me, it's like, come on, it's jazz. You've got all these different people that are playing their own version of a standard,
Mhm.
Right.
and they're bringing their own thing to it. They're somebody will come in and do a song that really well, except they'll do it with a different rhythm, or they'll do it with a different set of instruments, or they'll do it at a different tempo. And it's like, holy cow, here's somebody who listened to that song that you've heard a million times, and they heard something you never heard before.
Mhm.
And to me, that's the fun of Batman. Batman has now been around long enough that Batman's the equivalent. It's Sherlock Holmes.
Mhm.
He's just sort of he's sort of a famous pop cultural character, and so you're going to get all these interpretations of the character by all these different people who have grown up with him, and who feel like they know him, and who feel like they have a proprietary interest in him. And that's, to me, that's great.
For sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree.
We do have, I guess, one last question that came to my
Although
mind.
some of these new Batman versions are really dumb, but
All right.
All right. Well, that's good.
That'll be
Moving on.
the soundbite that goes on the TikTok, Andrew.
We'll cut that one together. Yeah, no problem.
there you go.
That's how we do business.
Yeah.
So, a lot of our fans have been wondering, and you might not be able to give us, a clear answer on it, but we're wondering if we're ever going to get a continuation of the comic of Batman '89.
Hadn't occurred to me. I don't know.
Okay. Maybe something to consider. But yeah. So, Sam,
Is
thank you.
Mantis going to show up
Yeah,
at some point in the
ask about
comic?
Mantis.
Oh man, I so wish.
That would be
Mantis. We were Dennis Cowan and I were originally talking about incorporating Mantis into the Milestone universe.
I watched it when it was coming on the air, man.
Yeah,
when I was
yeah.
a kid. Yeah,
Yeah,
first
and,
run.
I so wish we could get a new life for Mantis.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh man.
But I'll tell you the truth. I do not even know who owns the rights to Mantis right now.
Oh my God! Was it
yeah,
on
it's-
Fox or something?
Well, it's either Universal was the production entity. The show was on
out.
Fox, and
yeah, right.
I don't know who controls the rights. To be truthful,
They got
I,
to figure that
I don't
out.
know where to go to hold out my little cup and say, please, sir.
Okay.
See, production company Universal Television, so I think it would fall under NBC Comcast, but I don't know. We'll see. Whoever's listening, if you happen to work at Comcast in the legal department specifically, let us know.
That's right.
If
If you're watching this podcast and you have the rights to Mantis,
Yes.
please give us a call.
Yes.
He's serious. We're serious over here.
Yes, we want to do a Batman Mantis crossover where they fight Gorilla Boss.
Oh,
I want to see your Matt Reeves sequel with Gorilla Boss.
there you go. There you go.
I think that would be incredible.
Yeah.
We want the dark, gritty, realistic Batman with Gorilla Boss.
You joke, but I think it could be done, honestly. I think there's some way to make that happen. Seriously.
It's like war for the planet of the Batman.
I mean, if you're going to get a director to do it, it should be the guy from the Planet of the Apes.
He's the guy. Andy Serkis as Gorilla Boss.
That's true.
See?
He
I'm
can
telling
do
you, it
more
can
than one role. He can be Alfred and Gorilla Boss.
That's right.
Or Alfred becomes Gorilla Boss, and that's what makes it more of the conflict.
Hire this guy.
I've been saying that for years. This is all a big ploy to get Ben at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
This whole podcast.
I now have Sam Hamm's endorsement. This is amazing.
There you go.
But this has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on this podcast. We have been, fans of yours ever since we first covered this, and really honoring that the scripts that you wrote had so much to them that we did not get to see. It is, partially because of you that we got this movie that made us Batman fans, but it's also because of you and the scripts and the quality of your writing and your love for Batman that has given us this podcast. So thank you for all of that.
Yes, thank you.
Well, you guys are too stinking kind. Thank you so much. May I tell you, it has been a complete pleasure talking with you. I mean, if you can't tell, I've been having a good time. I've been having a good time.
Okay, good.
So, and with that, that is superhero stuff you should know.
Yeah, it's been a treat, and you guys should. There's going to be more every week. There's more stuff you should know. There's
That's true.
never an end to the stuff you should know. Come back every week. See these guys.
Thank you.
You bet.
Big thanks to our research assistant, Dan, for gathering the visuals for the YouTube experience as usual. And we have a few fan comments on our She-Hulk episode. Yes, I'm pulling the fan comments from the She-Hulk episode just to get you guys back. So, to that episode. So,
Yeah, dude, I'm surprised the comments weren't like an insane dumpster fire. Like they've been decent. I thought the comments are going to be terrible on
I
that
thought they
one.
were going. Yeah, I was just like, all right. Like even the ones that are negative towards the show, they're towards the show. They're not towards our show. So I'm like, all right,
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
But let's go into a few of the comments here. Thomas Navin said supposedly the Bill Bixby scenes of the She-Hulk pilot were shot, but that was about it before they shut down. Thomas, would love to hear more about that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I saw this comment. I was like, it makes sense. And I was saying in the episode too, I was like, they probably filmed like exteriors, just boring shots. You know, they didn't. Yeah, it's just nothing there.
Yeah,
Really. No offense to Bill Bixby, but you know, we were there for She-Hulk.
But I mean, he's not the star of the show either. So like, you can't really do much with just those. It'd just be like scenes that you put on the DVD or Blu-ray extras.
Right.
So let's see. We got Thomas. We've also got Platinum Pagoda saying, "Don't always get to listen right after you post, but I definitely jump to give a like and a view. Thank you for that,
Thank
Platinum.
you.
Usually I binge your channel during road trips on weekends. Great travel company. Ever seen any of the luchadors in Mexico that shamelessly rip off comic heroes? Hilarious stuff." I haven't personally gone to Mexico to see them, but I know that they exist. I have not had a deep dive into it.
I knew that they had luchadors and had their own characters, but I didn't know that there was a lot of rip-offs going on. So that's interesting. I did go to Mexico actually a couple times when I was a kid, but man, I would have loved seeing luchador shit, but we just didn't do that.
It does kind of make sense, you know, because it's like you got the mask, you got the cape. Like at some point, somebody's going to be like, "Hey, why don't I just do it off of this character?" You know,
The shared DNA between pro wrestling and superhero shit is staggering. You go guys in costumes fighting each other. There's stories, you know, there's quite a lot going on there for sure.
For sure. Last one comes from Alex of the What Mean podcast. I brought this up in our Patreon, but I thought I would honor this comment in the main show as well. I love the death of the Incredible Hulk as a kid. The transformation scenes were so captivating. I even would growl like Lou Ferrigno at my sister as a kid in our old home movies. There was a part with a force field of Hulk that I'd recreate with our sprinkler. That's pretty awesome. From my memory, the Thor and Daredevil movies were fun as well. Saw those as an adult. The Daredevil one, I remember being the stronger one. They turned Thor into a jock type personality wise and even had a Donald Blake. They only called Kingpin Fisk, though. He had some ridiculous sunglasses, looked more like a used car salesman. Can't you see yourself in this car? Yes.
I'm sorry, everybody, and Alex. I have not seen this.
I haven't seen it.
I want to
myself.
see it. You haven't seen it either, yes. But thank you for the comment. It sounds cool. I'm sure I would have been into it as well if I had seen it. Especially as a kid, you know. So
Alex was telling me that they're available on Tubi for free. So
got to get that Tubi.
I know where I'm going after we're done here. So thank you, Alex, for
Yes,
this.
thank you. See those insane traps from Ferrigno.
It's insane. There's you know, I know that we're down the tradition of CG Hulk, you know, ever since the movies, but man, like you got to give that guy props.
Oh man, you ever seen a pumping iron?
I've seen the highlights of it with Arnold talking about it's like coming.
Yes,
that's the most.
That
popular.
shit's incredible. You see, look, quick tangent here, but it's a documentary that follows Arnold and in his bodybuilding career. in the documentary, he says, "I'm going to do movies now." You know what I mean? So it's like just before he starts doing his movie career, and you see like a really young Schwarzenegger and Ferrigno kind of, and they're
Oh
like
man.
rivals. And dude, it's a great documentary, and it's like mid late 70s. It is well worth seeing because it's got some funny ass shit like the Cumming stuff, but also just to see like, Schwarzenegger would trick other bodybuilders into doing like wrong techniques sometimes just so he can come out on top. And he was just kind of a little
Yeah.
shit.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's worth it. It's kind of Schwarzenegger versus Ferrigno in some ways.
Hulk versus Mr. Freeze. I gotta check that out.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's a good little documentary.
I'll check it out. But thanks, guys, for your comments on the She-Hulk episode. And I guess that's it for the comments. Over to the fan shoutouts.
Thank you for those comments, everybody. And we want to thank some of our newer people here. Well, thank you to everybody on the list, but
Mhm.
to also just to thank some people orally is Chris R, Chris M, Braxton W, Darren F, Billy L, Yusuf A, Kevin R, Derek O, and Mark M. Thank you guys for joining the Patreon and our other supporters as well. Thank you guys as always. And then also please join the Shasta Army. That's at patreon.com/superhero stuff pod. And the Shasta Army is our $1 tier that gets you that their shout out and to be up on the board and that their visual aid. Then we have the $5 tier that gets you a whole other show. This show's every Monday. The $5 tier on our Patreon is going to get you the shout out plus a whole other show. So we reference it quite a lot, not by accident, in this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a whole other show, more info, more knowledge, more tutelage. And the $10 tier gets you the $1 and $5 tier benefits, plus the monthly meetup, which we meet up monthly to have a discussion at hand and to kind of shoot the shit with fans, basically in a Zoom like call environment type of deal. Our merch is being slowly taken off by Redbubble
I
and
thought my Ben
Threadless.
Man looked too much like Batman. So
How
I guess I'll take
dare
that as a
they?
compliment.
How dare they? That looks nothing like Flighter Mouse.
Right.
So dear Flighter Mouse. Yeah, so some of our stuff's been struck down lately, if you can believe it or not.
You can only get the Indeed Wizard. Oh, I guess, and also Zacula now that his hair is brown.
His hair's
But
brown
yeah.
now, so he doesn't look like So when we got the email this week, I was just like, fair enough.
To be fair,
Yeah.
it's only a matter of time. I literally have the bat symbol on my chest on this.
Yeah, we didn't. The good thing we don't have to give him any money because this shit never sold. But
My hair are in two tufts in the back for the ears.
yeah, the ever dwindling supply of merch here. But anyway, yeah, get your Indeed Wizard and Zacula mugs or shower curtains at all of these sites, superheroespod.rebel.com and superherostuffpod.threadless.com. Artwork by Stefan Santa Cruz. And then please send us some audio at superhousepodcast@gmail.com. Your phone has a voice recorder already on it. You record something, click share, and then put on our email, and there it is. And then I am Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter. Thunderwolf lives on YouTube. ThunderwolfDrew.com has my whole portfolio in one place except for AmanoRecon.com. AMANORECON.com. It's an R-rated Power Rangers meets Stranger Things meets X-Files type of original show, but that's my elevator pitch. Sam Hamm, call me please.
Yes.
And basically it's R-rated. It's a horror sci-fi comedy, and we've made the 4-minute thing that's like a pitch video, and that is actually playing at some film festivals coming up. So that's happening. Once it's done with the film festival run, it's going to be on YouTube and all that kind of jazz. And that's going to, and more importantly, on Indiegogo, which is going to be campaign funding. Indiegogo.com. It's going to have our campaign for get like an actual pilot, 23 minutes. So And also Shudder, call me, please.
Yes.
Wouldn't Shudder want this? Come on.
Mhm.
Seriously. So yeah, poster artwork by Zachary Jackson Brown art.com. And Gaming Gaiden is my gaming podcast coming out real soon. We're almost done recording. We're at 7 of 10. We want to record 10 Patreon episodes to match the 10 regular episodes. So we got 7 in the can and 10 regular episodes in the can. That's where we're at. Being totally transparent here. It is coming very, very soon. That's it. Ben.
Shout out to Comic Capital on Instagram, as well as the Everything Entertainment Club on Clubhouse for your support. You can follow us on social media on Twitter at SuperhousePod, which is how we met with Sam Hamm. Instagram, Superhero Stuff Pod. TikTok, Superhero Stuff Pod, where we're going to have Hamm say that the Batman movies are stupid. And then we're on Vero now at Superhero Stuff Pod. And also my website is benwanwriter.com, where you can read my Gotham script, Gotham Vampire, where young Bruce faces off against the Mad Monk, and my spec script for Elementary called The Death of Sherlock Holmes, a modern update on the classic story, The Adventure of the Dying Detective, and Curb Your Enthusiasm, Disneyland, the Curb episode they could never make. Larry David goes to Disneyland. So thanks, Dan, for the visual on this. And my YouTube channel is in the description below, where you can check out my project, Doctor Who, The Ronin of Time, an audio drama I write, narrate, and edit. The Eighth Doctor meets Miyamoto Musashi in ancient Japan. My personal Instagram is benwanwriter. My son's Instagram, my cat Alfie, is at Alfie Pennyworth Cat. And if you have an Alfie yourself, or a Peanut, or any other cat yourself, then you can get the Whisker Box, the only cat box for the crazy cat lady and gent. We have some sort of promo link for that. And we also have a promo link for the Bark Box. Y'all give your dog exactly what they want with the Bark Box. With our promo link, you can get the first month off free, valued at $35. And you can find those promo links at superherostuffpod.com/shop. I forgot to update the image on this, so we still have the Ezra Miller Flash. Oh, well.
We're going to get it. I swear, once we finish recording, it's like, whoop, out the window, you know?
I got to go right onto that. But you can
put
get
that
your
in our
own...
to-do list. we need to do that. Yeah.
But yes, you can also get a Keaton Funko for yourself, as well as the Batman history of the Dark Knight, the definitive history of the Dark Knight by Andrew Farago and Gina McIntyre, which covers part of the history of Batman 89, as well as The Boy Who Loved Batman by one of our special guests, Michael Uslin. You can get all that type of stuff at our shop, superherostuffpod.com/shop. Over to Andrew.
Oh, man. And you know, we want you to do us a favor.
I'm actually going to do the Sam Hamm quotation from his draft. Tell your friends. Tell all your friends.